And you seem to almost, I don't want to cheapen your relationship building skills, but it almost seems like you fell into some of this stuff. I mean, it's in the book, I'm sure it's condensed, but it's like dot dot dot. Oh, I'm running into Magic Johnson, and then I called Pamela Anderson. It's like whoa, 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 whoa. How do you just who are you calling? Like, how do you even start these relationships?
It started from the baseball card business that eventually evolved into sports and celebrity memorabilia.
Yeah,
So,
we'll get into that.
and that was very, very unorthodox.
So first of all, how's that sciatica?
It doesn't exist anymore,
Good
man.
for you.
I'm
How
in the
did you get
best
rid of
shape
it?
of my life. I think I lost some weight. I got sober, and I
Wow.
realized that a lot of it was also coming from the brain when you're so deeply addicted to opiates or that type of medication. I think the brain signals tell you you're in so much more pain. And
Oh,
once
interesting.
I got sober and started working the 12 steps, got in shape, went away.
Yeah, good for you. I mean, I don't even remember where I heard you had sciatica. Is it in your book?
It's in my book.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I
Well,
had it
that's
for years, years.
because you don't normally hear of people who just get rid of sciatica
Mm.
suddenly. Yeah. On the show, I'm a big fan of using people's past or even current adversity as a competitive advantage or a superpower. And what I think is interesting is your clients are, among others, Dennis Rodman, Hulk Hogan, Charlie Sheen. It's a little bit like looking at a TMZ roster of people that may or may not have had some other issues in the
Right,
past, you know?
right.
Do you think you have an ability to relate to some of your clients better, like Dennis Rodman, maybe because of your past struggle with sobriety?
I mean, I think so. I also fully believe that America in general loves a good comeback story.
Hmm.
And I think all those guys have come back tremendously. Dennis, I always say, is a rebound king in life. You can never count him
Interesting.
out. And everybody's had something. Nobody's off the table. Even Magic Johnson, had his issues years ago, obviously, and with, the HIV announcement, and it's the biggest thing in the world right now. I mean, what he's done, what he does to give back to the community and to businesses and all over the world, nobody's done it like Magic Johnson has.
You started as correct me if I'm wrong here because I don't want to throw you under the bus. You're a special ed kid from New Jersey?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the usual path to becoming one of the most successful sports agents. Usually, I assume at that age, you yourself might have even written yourself off as
Absolutely.
somebody.
You listen to teachers, they tell you what
Yeah,
you can and can't do, and you start believing it.
yeah.
And I just had Elliot Lovey was his name, my intro to business teacher. And I had a class with him, and he wanted everybody to go home and create a business. And I remember being 13 years old and having this imagination that I was kind of this awkward, I don't want to say geeky, but felt like an outcast. And I had this big baseball card collection that I amassed, and that became my business. Eventually, I turned it into a real business and gave me a little bit of self-confidence.
So you weren't planning to turn it into a business. It was an assignment from your teacher?
Exactly.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Did he ever know that you were crushing?
To this day, I went back and I spoke at my high school 3 months ago, and we still talk about
He's
it.
still there?
He's still there.
How old is he?
He's
He
a
must have been young.
legendary
Okay.
tennis teacher,
Oh, wow.
tennis coach. He's won several state championships, and yeah, he's probably in his early 70s now.
Wow. So he was probably pretty young then as a teacher.
And he knew that something was different about me and something was special because he would tell me to stay after class, that I'm gonna spend a little bit extra time with you. He saw the way my brain functioned and the way my brain worked, the same way my father did. And he pulled that out of me. He knew that 90% of what all the kids were doing wasn't good for Darren Prince, but I had this little 10% that none of them had.
It's funny that he spotted that because I think public school is actually not set up at all to reward people who are entrepreneurial thinkers. There
Mhm.
was no reason for anybody to believe. My teachers did the same thing. They were like, "Oh, your son doesn't listen. He can't color inside the lines." That was literally a critique I would get.
Mhm.
And I'm still coloring outside the lines.
Yep,
This is not a
absolutely.
real job that I have here. This is a fake, made up sham that somehow caught fire.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lightning in a bottle. That's
Right.
what happened to both of us. And it
Yeah.
keeps happening.
Yeah. But it screws you up, right? Because you have this imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
which there was no name for that back then.
Right.
It was just, you're right, you shouldn't be here, right?
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
was like, if you feel that way, you probably shouldn't be in the room.
Absolutely.
And I know you suffered from that a lot, especially when you were starting to meet Muhammad Ali and Smoking Joe, and you're just sitting there. Like, what's going through your head when you're with these guys?
I only knew how to do it one way. I knew from the business side and the networking side and the entrepreneurial side, I knew what I was doing, but I felt so uncomfortable inside. I was always looking for that outside fix that was the inside job. And the only way I can do it was honestly I had to be high on opiates. For years, it was Oxycontin, Vicodins, Percocets were my best friends, and nobody knew about it but me. And I did build a very successful agency through that. But like I tell kids today when I speak, at the end, what was once living to use turned out to using to live. And I would have gone back in a time machine in a second to trade that feeling of not wanting to wake up in the morning.
Really?
It was
So
that dark.
you got yeah that you must have got pretty dark, and I want to rewind it a little bit because I mean, how do you even think to get started on opiates? I mean, you started younger than literally anybody probably that you've met.
14 years old, I was in sleepaway camp. I told a counselor I had horrible stomach pains. This nurse, her name was Greta. She gave me this green liquid, and I took a shot. It tasted horrible. As I'm walking across the softball field, all those inadequacies and feelings we just talked about of less than, not being a part of, not feeling as equal, went away like that.
Wow.
And now, in those 5, 10 seconds, my life changed forever. I wanted more of it. I now felt just as good, just as smart, just as popular, just as cool, just as funny. I got back to the bunk. The guys are laughing with me. I got the courage to go to the bunk next door for the first time in my life. I was flirting with girls at 14 years old, fearless. And I went to bed thinking nothing of it. The next day I woke up, did all my activities that you do in summer camp. And that next night I'm looking up at the sky thinking that feeling was amazing last night, but there was no stomach pain. I looked at the counter, I heeled over. I said, man, my stomach is killing me. We got to go back. I did it for 3 straight weeks. That magic green liquid until I found out it was liquid Demerol.
It seems, first of all, Demerol for a 14-year-old kid. I mean, wow, any license you may or may not have had should be revoked. I would imagine at that time as a nurse. Is it not insanely irresponsible? Hey, Darren has a stomach ache for 2 weeks in a row. Maybe he should see a doctor. Nobody thought about that.
Back then, I guess not. I mean, I know there was points where she was kind of telling me, maybe you should get some x-rays, maybe you get some ultrasounds done. And I was like, no, it helps. I go to sleep every time I take it. And it was my parents that came up visitation day to meet with her because they heard about it. My mom obviously lost her crap, when she found out, said the same thing. Why would you not call me? But here's the thing. And as an advocate, I don't blame the nurse because it still would have happened. 6 months later, I was at a dentist appointment getting my wisdom teeth removed. And I lied to my mom after the 8 Vicodins were gone. I went downstairs holding my cheek. I said, Mom, I don't know what's going on. We got to go back to the dentist.
So this addict behavior, that's an argument for addict behavior being genetic or inborn or something like that, right? Because when you're 14, you're not, I mean, it's hard to
Again,
say.
I know the doctors will tell you that. I don't believe in genetics. For me, I believe I never spoke up about feeling less than. I believe that it was a personality dysfunction, that because I didn't have the courage and I couldn't be real enough with my teachers and my friends and my parents to speak up and say, I feel this way. Why do I feel this way? I need some help. That's why it all spiraled out of control.
Yeah, oh man. But at age 14, you wouldn't think you're not thinking I'm addicted to this. You're thinking I found the magic freaking potion.
Yep.
I took Adderall and I started in college. And I remember this resonated really well with me from your book because I took this Adderall pill that I'd gotten from my girlfriend because she's like, you're ADD, I can tell. You're just like my brother. You're just like my brother. So she goes and grabs one, and I took one, and I went, holy shit, this is how normal people feel every day.
Yep.
They're not trying so hard to pay attention to what the teacher's saying and then being like, I wonder if that light is like the same kind of light as the shit we're in I don't understand where we are again in the book. And then the teacher's like, you're an idiot. What are you doing here? And I thought, if I can take this every day, I'm going to be just fine in college. I'm going to be just fine in law school. I just doubled my capacity to learn. I feel funny. I feel awake and alive. Everyone's laughing at my jokes, and those that aren't, I don't even care. Whereas that would have sent me back to my dorm room like, she doesn't like me. None of that anymore.
Absolutely.
All gone.
Yep.
And that was a scary feeling after a while because I was taking it every day. And my girlfriend's, I got a prescription for it, by the way, by telling the doctor, hey, so I took my friend's brother's medication and it worked great. And he's like, sure enough, here you go. Some amphetamines, which is what Adderall really is. And it's like, looking back, I'm going, what? What are you thinking? Isn't there a test for this?
Yep.
And but that's a little scary now because I remember taking it, and then summer came, and I go, well, I'm just gonna keep refilling this shit. And my girlfriend's like, why? We don't have school. And I was like, yeah, but have you seen me on and off? I mean, why would I stop doing
Why
this?
would you stop doing it?
And I go to the doctor, and he goes, hey, kids are dying from taking this. They're having heart attacks. And I was like, and that won't happen to me, which is what all addicts, I think, do.
Yeah.
But when a doctor prescribes it,
It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
And that went on for years until I went, the doctor that prescribed this to me was an idiot, and I knew that at the time. So I don't think the fact that I have this piece of paper means that my brain is fine with this.
There you go.
But that took me a long time to come around. And I don't know if amphetamines are as addictive as opiates. I don't really know if there's a scale or...
They're up there. There's a lot of people in the world of recovery from Adderall and Ritalin.
Yeah. I think if I hadn't been taking extended release, I think we might be having this conversation while I'm crushing them up in the bathroom and putting them up my nose.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's hard to say. All right, back to your story. That was a little clip for me there that we can do.
I love hearing it. We all have something, right?
I mean, it didn't even occur to me till I read this book that I probably had that, right? I thought, oh, well, I'm not that. Oh, wait a minute. This sounds remarkably familiar. Except I stopped because of no real reason. Honestly, it was harder to get. It was expensive. My insurance started screwing up. The doctor told me not to. Then I was just like, out of hell with this. I should probably get off it anyway. But that I could have easily have just been like, screw it. I'm going to order it from India or whatever. Man. So you're 14. You're kind of hooked on Demerol. How are you getting it at 14 after camp?
Well, it took me probably about a year until I was able to start getting it, either from the streets or just friends' parents that had it. Because I started making money. I sat down with my dad one night. I was 14 years old. I said, I need to get insurance on my baseball cards. He thought I was nuts. He's like, what do you mean insurance? I said, I need about 8 or 9 worth of insurance. He's like, all right, can you bring down a list so I can see this? And he's like, Darren, that says 8 or 9,000. I was like, yeah, I'm not talking 8 or 900. He goes, how the hell do you have 8 or 9,000 worth of cards? I showed him this price guide. Anybody that collected back in the 80s, it was called CCP. Now, everybody says Beckett. Current card price guide. It was a newspaper.
Okay.
CCP came out before Beckett. And I sat down with him, and he challenged me. He goes, who's going to buy these, though? This Mickey Mantle card for $200, this Reggie Jackson rookie for $75. I said, oh, it's funny you should ask. I pull out this newspaper ad, and there was a show at the Holiday Inn in Livingston, New Jersey for $25. I got a table, and I shared it with my good friend Steve Simon, who runs my agency to this day. And he went into it. We shared the table. He went into it as a hobby, just maybe have a fun day selling cards. I went into it as a business. I spent 2 weeks every night, the perfect holders, the perfect price guides, and I made over $1,000 in a Sunday afternoon at 14 years old, and the light bulb went on. So now I had money. I was deeply insecure, apparently a severe learning disability, had this passion and this love affair already with opiates. Easy to find.
Yeah. Oh, man, that is a recipe for disaster. Insecure, starts making money way too early. I mean, if there was a YouTube back then, you'd just be.
I'd be a billionaire, guys.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. It might have ended tragically.
That's
a little earlier. Yeah. But I would imagine, like, you're in school, you're ADD, you can't focus. Amen, brother. I hear you on that. I mean, that's the story of my life. My mom was a special ed teacher. That's probably why I wasn't in special ed, because she's like, no, my son's not in special ed. I teach special ed. But I think half my teachers were like, this kid is going to be in prison. The other half that were teaching things I was actually interested in, like science, they were like, he should be in the gifted program. So they were butting heads like, wait, he's not a total a-hole idiot in your class? And I'm sure you had 1 or 2 teachers that thought you were special, and the rest of them were like, is this thing on? You're a knucklehead.
I had 2 teachers. That's exactly what it was. 2 that believed in me.
The other element of this, you're in the baseball card trade. I would imagine that you're thinking, as a teenager, I got a car or 2. I've got my magic potion that nobody has to know about. Girls are starting to pay attention because I'm the only guy who can fill the car with gas and drive a new car and not picking her up on my bike. You probably thought, I can hold this shit together. I'm faking it. Everyone's believing this, so I'm good.
Absolutely.
I went to an AA meeting with a friend of mine several times because I'm curious about that stuff. And a lot of people told stories like that. Like, you fake it until suddenly you realize everyone knows, but you're the only one. You're the last one in on the joke.
That the gig is up.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Before we get into your gig is up story, though, you're getting heavy in the baseball card trade. I'm finding it really funny that the guy that you started with now works with you. I mean, what are the odds of that?
I know, and he's great. We still laugh about it to this day. I mean, he's does amazing at my agency. So he's the vice president, and you know, he was with me during a very special time in my life, and he's there again now.
Yeah, I mean, terrible at selling baseball cards, really good at wrangling A-list talent.
Exactly.
So you're dealing with adults, though, as a kid. You're 14, 15,
I was the
16.
only person in school, teachers included, that had a cell phone. Back then, it was called Bell Atlantic, not the big rubber ones that you saw in a night at the Roxbury.
Okay.
These were a big metal aluminum battery on the bottom of a leather case with a rubber antenna. It was Bell Atlantic, and it would be in my locker in between class, and it was $3 a minute to use this phone. So I would call stockbrokers in between class, find out what cards they wanted. There was no internet back then, no texting. I would have to call different dealers, get the cards. Hey, bring it to the show this week and I'll pick it up. I'd buy a Mickey Mantle card for 2,000. I'd flip it to the investor for 3,000. That was my life.
Unbelievable. And your teachers didn't care that you had a cell phone in the school?
Well, I was in between class. I was always respectful enough to not, because my dad always put me on notice, and he was big on education. My mom was more so, but my dad had that business hustle. He was always a successful businessman. He knew this was my calling. He knew school
Yeah.
wasn't for me.
That's lucky, though, right?
Mm.
I mean, they could have just tried to hammer you into that square hole.
I got in a lot of trouble in college because of my business. I dropped out after 1 year.
What did your dad think of all this? I mean, he must have at first been like, you should probably focus on school. Like, what was the turning point where he went, okay, this is your thing?
He knew the second weekend because I think I made about $2,000 after making 1,000 the week before, and being an old school Jewish father, it really like lit him up. And like I
Yeah.
said, he was a big time entrepreneur, very successful at a very young age. And
What did he
to
do?
see his son, he was in direct mail coupon advertising, something similar to Valpak,
Got it, yeah.
but it was all over the state of New Jersey. And
Those
so to
businesses are
see
never
his
the same.
son have this hustle in him
Yeah.
and having no clue what I'm doing, but saw me go to one end of the room with a wad of cash, come back with a bunch of cards, and then see by the end of the show, 4 hours later, those cards get into a double wad of cash that I had the morning we got to the show.
Right. Like, you have twice as many cards and twice as much cash.
Yep.
What's happening right now?
Yep. And the thing was, because again the insecurities and the feeling of less than, and in that show on that floor I felt so alive. But when I was back in my bedroom by myself at night, I felt like that broken piece of crap again. I always felt like I didn't belong, so I would lie about the money. He would ask me how much did I make, let's go over it, and I would shove a couple thousand under the mattress because, hey, as a 15, 16-year-old kid dropping out of high school, I needed it. I needed to have that money in my pocket so I
Yeah.
could take people out for lunch, for dinner, take my friends out. It's take my friends shopping. I wanted to, similar to Dennis Rodman with the watches. I was that
Yeah.
way with that money. I needed to buy people's love and attention and affection, and that's what I did with it.
We're talking about how Dennis Rodman stole, I think, 50 watches while he was a janitor at the airport and then just gave them away to his friends. And the idea was, I want people to like me.
Yep.
So you were weirdly, right? Like, sneaking money away from your dad so he doesn't do anything responsible with it.
Exactly.
And then turning around and like,
Doing something completely irresponsible just to buy fake friends.
but like not horrible. Like you weren't necessarily, well, the drug thing, not so
Right.
good, but you weren't going to the strip club or buying
No,
hookers
at
or
16
whatever.
years old, you couldn't.
You were like, let's all go
I
to
take everybody to the
McDonald's.
mall.
Yeah.
Let's go for a nice Italian restaurant, and I got the taxis taken care of because you weren't driving at 16.
Right. No.
I would just get 10, 12 of my boys, and we'd all go. Let's go to the batting cages for the day and play mini golf, and it was always on Prince. Everybody knew that Prince was covering the tab.
That's like the weirdest sort of like drug dealer bling ever, though, right? Like baseball cards, batting cages, arcade, and I don't know, like
Bowling.
macaroni grill or
Yes.
whatever you have, bowling, ballin', out of control on Prince. So, but are you like high during this time, or are you just spending money to stay high?
Sporadically, not as much. It didn't really start until my senior year in college with getting high. But I would party occasionally on the weekends. I wasn't the biggest like party animal. I'd have a lot of my guy and girlfriends call me to come out, and some of these girls I remember I wrote about in the book. I get these messages: "Stop playing with your stupid baseball cards and come to this party." And nothing got in the way of my baseball cards. I didn't care. I was on a mission. I was just so focused that I was a late bloomer with dating. Didn't matter.
Yeah.
I wasn't bothered by it.
Plus, when you're an entrepreneur, you're like, you kind of work. Are you still kind of a workaholic? I am.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's the thing I like doing the most.
I love it, man.
I mean, I'm married and I have a kid, and my wife, like, she gets it. She's like, just be there for your kid enough, be there for me enough. But I get it if you like don't want to watch Netflix, but you want to go over your show notes one last 5 more times for Darren Prince.
And in my business too, as an agent, I truly have this mindset that I'm only good as my last deal. So no matter how close I am with Hulk or Magic or Dennis or Ric Flair or somebody on any given day, I got to bring the heat again. I got to go back. I tell my office, you celebrate that deal today, you get up tomorrow morning, let's go out and find another one.
It's that never-ending hustle,
Mm.
but that requires never-ending energy, never-ending. I don't even what's the word I'm looking for. You can't rest on your laurels, but that can get. But not everyone can handle that, and the magic potion
It's like
helps you do it.
drinking water to me at this point. It's
Yeah.
so easy. You know, you've been doing it so long. So many people in my life don't understand how I'm able to function, and it's super easy. And you know, a lot of it is the balance too. My 12-step program. I know how to take time to myself when I need it and check out.
How long have you been sober?
11 and a half years.
So that's a long time. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a long time. And I met you today. We talked before, but we have mutual friends.
Right.
And you're a warm guy, or at least you're really good at faking it so far. But everybody.
We're talking about Jennifer Cohn.
Yeah, talking about Jen
Love her.
Cohen. She's
Yeah.
great. And she's like, no, you have to meet this guy. He's a lot like you. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And then, a lot of adjectives that you might not want to associate with yourself. Same as, well, he's kind of like this, Jewish guy. He's a hustler. And he's like, kind of does this and that. And I was like, I don't know if you want to tell him that because am I offended? I don't know. I think I'm not offended, but you know her. Like,
Yeah.
She's great like that. But I think what she saw in common was that vibe of like going out, getting it, doing it right, hustling your ass off, and also being a competitive son of a bitch a little bit here and there.
And like my dad say, his favorite expression, it's not what you say, it's what you do. So if I'm going to tell Jordan I'm going to do something and then give you a contact or hook you up with something, you better believe Darren Prince is going to do it. I think that's the way we are from the East Coast, to be honest with you, because she always tells me, I cannot believe when you said you're going to do this, you do it. I'm going to get you that. It's just in me.
That was what she said we had in common. I always do what I say I'm going to do. And that in L.A., it's like you're an
Rarity,
alien.
right?
You're an alien, man, out here, California, Southern California. So I said I was going to do this thing, and I did it. Yeah, but I didn't think, I thought you forgot. I didn't think you were really going to show up. I mean, you don't have to call and confirm 14 times. Like I said, I'll be there on Tuesday. I'm still coming on Tuesday. Yeah. So you're 16 years old, making what, like 200 grand a year?
A couple $100,000 a year at that point.
And what year was this?
1986.
Okay, so inflation calculator, that's like $300,000 or something.
Probably at least, I would imagine.
If not more.
Yeah.
30 plus years ago, 35 years ago almost. So suddenly you became a cool kid you went from special ed kid to this is the kid who makes more money than both of my parents, all of our parents put together.
Written up in the Daily News, USA Today, all these things started happening.
How did you learn to conduct business, right? Some of it's instinctual, but what's the rest of it?
I always go back to my dad. I miss him so much, and he just taught me, it's not what you say, it's what you do. Your reputation's the hardest thing to uphold, the easiest thing to lose. You only get one chance at it. And the idea is 1%, carrying it through is the other 99%. And I always took these three things with me. And he was so big on personal relationships, not just when I became an agent, but baseball cards, sports memorabilia, get to know them. Find out what their special interests are, when their birthdays are. Find out about their family, brothers, sisters, their friends, what their passions are. And I did that, and I studied that on almost everybody, because when it came to that, it was exciting. It wasn't like reading U.S. history or Spanish, and I gravitated to it, and I kind of stored it. So I knew when I would see somebody, hey man, how's the dog doing, or how's the, and it was almost like they were so taken back, and that I was so attentive to those details that it just continuously cultivated a relationship.
Do you keep the notes in your head, or do you keep them? Well, back then you didn't keep them in your phone. But
back then you didn't keep it in your phone. No, I just, I truly believe I was a statistical genius when it came to math. I would study the back of baseball cards as a teenager, and I can tell you what Darryl Strawberry hit in 1983 playing in the minor leagues, how many home runs, how many RBIs. And that was one thing that gave me a sense of self and some self-confidence, because when my boys would be arguing about sports or how many, singles a guy got 3 nights ago, they would say, ask Prince, he would know. So it made me actually feel good about myself, and I think that's why I gravitated more to studying statistics of basketball players, baseball players, because I was the go-to guy.
You could have been an actuary. That would have been exciting. Sorry, actuaries. We do have some that listen to the show.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, guys. We're laughing with you. How did you find mentors? You mentioned mentors in the book, and I was wondering if maybe because you had a great dad, you had good radar for other good people.
I think people just popped into my life too. God's plan, whatever it might have been, in any sector of the business or whatever business it was at that time, I always had great people. Like baseball cards, Barry Halper lived 10 minutes from my family's house, who passed away. He was the legendary card collector, memorabilia collector, had the holy grail of all collections of all time. And then when I got into sports memorabilia, I had my friend Jeff Hamilton, a renowned leather jacket designer, introduced me to Harlan Werner, who's Muhammad Ali's agent for close to 30 years. And he brought me into the Ali family. And then it obviously evolved into the agency and Magic Johnson to this day. I owe my life. I mean, the guy took a chance on me and gave me the opportunity to bring him opportunities. And I thank him every day that I'm with him.
Yeah, the story with Magic is interesting because what, you were setting up signings of
I was doing his
memorabilia?
autograph signings through his agent at the time, Lon Rosen, who's also a dear friend. And Lon was his player rep for many years. And, they didn't allow many people into that shell. I mean, it was a very tight circle, but, Lon liked my hustle. He knew I did things right. I was honest. I worked my butt off. And Magic liked the organization. When he would show up at certain appearances with my crew, I would always pay extra people to be there because I'm like, this is about building a relationship. I don't want to be understaffed. And to this day, I still deal with his private jet information with his assistant, Natalie Wilson, who I love, his car services. I don't let anybody in my office even go near that. Those little things, because if there's a screw up, it's on Darren Prince, and I'm like that with most of my guys.
Very hands-on. So you
Yeah,
don't, wow. So you're really hands-on with your clients,
yeah.
even to this day. That must be,
I'll double check their hotel
yeah,
confirmations. I'll double check with security at airports for Hulk Hogan with my boy Chris Volo, who will always make sure it's hard for Hulk to walk to an airport through Hulk Hogan.
oh
So
yeah,
we'll make sure the golf carts are in a certain area. Ric Flair and his wife Wendy, they know the way I am. I mean, I'm very OCD with it. They're my family. I want to make sure when they get somewhere, it's as easy as an experience as possible. I don't want them getting bombarded by 300 fans. I want them getting in, getting out, getting to the hotel, getting rested. If there's a certain food they like or certain drink, I make sure it's there.
jeez, man, you can't really, I mean, it's hard to even buy that kind of care.
Yeah, and then the most important thing when they hurt and when life happens to them, I'm one of the first people there to speak to them,
Yeah,
you know?
wow. That's, it's hard to put your finger on that because Dennis Rodman earlier was saying a lot of people, he didn't say this exact phrase, but a lot of people are kind of fair weather fans. Like they like
Mm,
you when you're up, but then when you're low, it's like they're laughing at you
mm.
or they're just ignoring you.
I was there for, all the North Korean trips, and yeah, there was some ugly times after that third or fourth trip. I think it was the fourth trip in January 2014. It got very scary, and I wouldn't turn my back on him. I talked him into going into rehab because he was having, his drinking was escalating, and I just believe, that's when you find out, the true meaning of friendship. That you know, I don't want to just be there for people when they're on top. I want to
Mhm.
be there when they're struggling. Because I know firsthand, living through it, that I found my real true self from the adversity in my life. And if people turn their back on me, I wouldn't be alive right here sitting
Sure.
talking to
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have not come out the other side. I wonder if there's a part of you that looks at the opiate problem in like a kid who grows up in rural Montana
you.
and you go, of course it's hard for you to get sober. I'm a agent with money and resources and access to anyone in the world that I want to fly to,
Mm, mm,
and it was hard for me to get sober.
yep,
Like what chance does a kid have who works at a gas station?
same thing. Exactly. Everybody needs to, just accept the fact that there might be a problem, have the courage to speak to somebody about that problem. It doesn't matter, I say it all the time, whether you're from Park Avenue or Park Bench or Yale or jail. Addiction doesn't discriminate. It all comes down to taking that first step, taking that action to identify that, how did it get to this point? Or I don't want it to keep escalating and I want to stop it now. And I can't do it by myself.
Yeah, how do you do that? I heard you on Dr. Drew, who's I think a mutual friend of
We
ours.
had dinner 2 nights ago with
He,
Dennis.
that's right.
Yeah.
He texted me, or I texted him right before that. And I said, "Do you know anything about this Suboxone drug?" And he's like, "Gotta go." And I was like, "Oh, well, hit me later." And then it turned out he was, yeah, with you guys looking at brain
I,
scans or
I
something.
have a crazy story about Suboxone with Dr. Drew. When Dennis was on Celebrity Rehab in 2005, Dr. Drew called me, and I thought I was sober. I truly did. I was on Suboxone for a year and a half at that point, and I
And this
told
is like a drug that's supposed to
yeah,
push you
it's
off
it's an
opiates. Or,
opiate blocker. It basically takes away the cravings. If you do happen to take an opiate, it blocks it. There's no, psychological euphoria effect from it. I thought I was living my best life, and he called me out right on the phone. He goes, "Darren, I don't really know you, but I'm going to tell you that's highly dangerous, And the Suboxone after a year and a half is even more addictive now to your system than the real opiates were. And
Oh man.
damn, he was right. I mean, that was a nightmare getting off that stuff. And so we knew each other. He's done some press for my book. He attended a big event that Jason Bin did in New York with Magic and I, and he's been a big supporter. So we kind of laugh about it, but it was a turning point because who knows? I might have just stayed on Suboxone the rest of my life thinking I found the cure.
Jeez, so I didn't realize that it's kind of like methadone, right?
It's exactly like methadone.
They come out with this, and then it turns out it's
Yep.
just as bad
Yep.
or worse and harder to get
Yep.
and more expensive.
Exactly.
So, all right, we can sort of come back to that in a second because there was a little bit of a downfall at that
Yes.
point that leads to all this. But you're a big dog at the card conventions, and I love this quote: "Money and power don't mean anything if you yourself don't mean something."
Hmm.
Well, how do you come to that realization at age 16 when you're balling out of control and all your friends love you?
I don't think I did. I think I realized it when I was sober. When me and Kristen were writing the book, you know, you're right, because back then it was about the jewelry and the diamonds, and I would have 3 or 4 beautiful models coming to these shows with me, and everybody wearing Prince of Cards jackets, and I wasn't Darren Prince anymore. I had an alter ego. It was Prince of Cards. And it was just the coolest thing in the world. Whatever, 16, 17, 18, walking into a
Satin
convention.
jackets,
Yes.
white satin. I'm envisioning.
I don't know. It's white. No, I think it was navy with yellow back then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Or navy with gold.
But certainly
The
satin.
flashier, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was back then.
And you're this like Jewish kid who I assume had a bunch of really gaudy ass jewelry on.
Exactly.
Where,
I had a diamond $sign ring that I would wear. That I can't even tell you. If there was the last piece of jewelry in the world, I wouldn't be wearing it to this day. But it was horrendous looking. I lived in that thing. I slept in it. I bought it at like a flea market vendor for like $5,000 one day, and it was like everything to me. People would stop me. I guess back then in '86, '87, it might have been considered cool.
oh man.
But I look back to see how deeply insecure and hurt that Darren Prince was to have to wear a $sign diamond ring. Look at me now.
Yeah, no rings.
You know.
Just is that like a Zen?
No, this is a recovery bracelet, and this is a same thing about spiritual energy and good vibes. And
I'm trying to even think who had a $sign diamond ring made.
not cubic zirconia, real diamonds.
Right, real diamonds. Yeah. So like this is like some stuff that got pawned when a drug dealer got arrested.
Exactly.
It was in his drawer.
Yeah.
Some like Iceberg Slim lost it in a bar.
Exactly.
Oh my God! All right, so you're on, but you're still in the high life. Like you're going on Arsenio Hall, successful teenagers.
Well, no, that one never happened.
That one never happened.
That one never happened. I'll never forget the call. This was another lesson from my dad, Danny Zucker, who I know is very big time in the industry still. Calls me up. I was at Bridgeport. I was a freshman in college. Said, we read about you in the USA Today, and Arsenio Hall is doing an amazing segment on successful teenagers. And he's got you. I think the girl was from Soho Soda out of Long Island, and one other person, because we're going to fly you out in 2 weeks. We'll have our office call you. So, of course, as an insecure, cocky, arrogant Jewish kid, start calling up my friends. Everybody in the dorm room's going nuts. We're all going out that night, getting wasted to celebrate. I call my dad the next morning. He goes, you didn't tell anybody yet, did you? I was like, oh, no, I told a couple people.
Yeah.
He goes, Darren, learn one thing. Until you're on that set of that studio, not on the plane, until you walk in and they mic you up, you have nothing. And about 4 days later, he called me to break my heart and say they're moving away from the segment. But I did get USA Today. I think there was like Sally Jesse Raphael, the New York Post, Wall Street Journal. But Arsenio would have been it. I mean, that was the holy grail.
He had that whole, and then you could have that.
I could have had Jeff Hamilton's jacket on with the diamonds. I mean, what an entrance.
Would you have shown up with the ring and the jacket?
Forget about it.
Oh,
been
man.
Unbelievable. With the Versace glasses with the gold on the side.
Yeah, you look like Jewish T.I. A Jewish Flava Flav. Oh man, your dad did have some good advice though. He said your reputation is the hardest thing to build and the easiest thing to lose. That's a very dad quote, right?
Exactly.
I mean, there's a lot of problems with that in LA these days, and your whole scene is based on reputation. But man, there's a lot of people that are around. I would imagine around Dennis Rodman, around Hulk Hogan, all your clients, you yourself, that are out to get you, out to get something from you all the time. How do you know who to trust? How do you know who's going to have your reputation in mind?
I mean, at this stage, I don't think we bring many new people into the personal circle. It's more corporate,
Yeah.
any type of business partnerships. But most of my guys are so smart. They know. Hulk's got his tight circle. Ric Flair does. Charlie Sheen does. Everybody's got. Obviously, Magic is. It's like Fort Knox to get in there, and they just. I think they know at their age at this point who are the real people and who are the ones that you have to kind of keep away and out of that little tight knit spot, because yeah, everybody wants something out of them. And that's the other reason I tell my guys in my office, I think we're so successful with them, not just professionally, but personally, is I'm not that guy that asks for anything. I've never been. I did it one time in my life, and it's in the book on the back cover right there. And it's the fact that Magic
The
Johnson
blurb.
Magic Johnson wrote the forward. They know me. I don't do that. It's just not. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that's calling them because I have an opportunity for them, not to take something from them.
I have trouble with that too. It took me years to even ask for help with things that people wanted to give me. Like it took me a long time to even go, well, I really need this thing and I know that this person can do it. What do you think that is? I mean, it goes to the unworthiness, right?
I think there's a little bit of unworthiness
Yeah.
too, a little bit. I think that still obviously always stays inside to us to a certain
Yeah.
degree. But see, this one I went all for it. I mean, when I emailed Mark Cuban, Jeannie Boss, all my people, they got right back. My social media, my Patrick Ganino's here, and we were talking about it 2 nights ago. The amount of social media support he got when Aiming High came out was just unbelievable. But that was because I knew it was helping so many people.
Yeah, you're
And
up.
that I felt so secure with asking, because
Yeah.
I knew that so many were affected by this, and there's not a person in this hotel today or in the city of Los Angeles that doesn't know somebody affected by the opiate epidemic or alcoholism. And that was one time in my life I truly felt like I deserve this. God's given me this platform, and I'm going to ask them to help me excel it to a whole nother level to help save lives.
Of course, yeah. Like if this book was just about you and there's a bunch of selfies with you and famous people,
No.
it'd have been harder for you to ask
Exactly.
for that, for sure. Going back to our wild insecurities
Yeah.
as teenagers, you started lifting weights and doing steroids and stuff like that. What that obviously is the same
Yeah.
pathology coming into play. That caused all kinds of health problems. I mean, at this point, give us a picture of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. You're drinking, you're popping pills.
I'm drinking, I'm popping pills, making tens of thousands of dollars a week, flipping and buying and selling vintage baseball cards, and finally got, beautiful women in my life, the pick of whatever I wanted, which again was something new that I wasn't used to. And, in the gym 6 days a week, injecting steroids, taking pills as steroids. And I thought life was great. I thought this was it. I mean, everybody wanted to hang out with me. Everyone wanted to be in my inner circle. And I wanted everybody to be in my inner circle.
Sure, yeah.
Because I needed it. I loved it. I loved the attention. I loved the fact that I finally felt like something in my life.
Man, I can totally identify with all this. I think that's why I like the book, because I was just like, oh my God, I tick a lot of these boxes. That's why I'm careful
You
with.
gotta laugh, because we made it through, man.
Well,
did.
yeah. I mean, you had a more harrowing version of this, but I look at it, because when I look at addictive behavior and things like that, I go, well, I don't really have that. But it's so not true.
Mm.
I definitely have that. I just don't have it with substances, and that's probably like ... yet, right? Like I'm always wary of that now. Looking in LA, some of my friends that were like the fitness trainer guys, they're freaking snorting heroin now.
Exactly.
And I'm like, what happened to you? You know?
Yeah.
And it's not just Hollywood. It's just
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Whoa, man, it's scary, right? It's terrifying. So didn't you have you must have been having a great time, but at some point it hits the fan, right? You hit the wall.
21 years old.
What happens?
I was arrested 4 times in 6 months.
But of course, all that was a coincidence, right? It
Every time.
Yeah.
The cops never should have been there. Yeah, it's bad timing. And I was put into a program called the Alliance by the judge. I lost my license for a year, and it was mandatory I stayed sober. Otherwise, I'd be. I think he said it was 120 days in jail. So I got my life in order, and maybe a few days to go in the program, and I knew I was graduating per se. I called my friend Dave up and I said, "Hey man, I got this great idea. Let's go to New York City and celebrate. Let's go do some mind eraser
What could
shots
go wrong?
at Jimmy Cafe." Jimmy Cafe, we were just of drinking age, obviously got 21, and we just partied our ass off there on the way, and we took a handful of Xanax, which I thought were better than the opiates, because the opiates is what also got me in trouble. And between that and the mind eraser shots, we're on our way home from New York City, and I wake up in the ER with 100 stitches in my face. He fell asleep behind the wheel. His car went into a ditch. My
Oh
face went into
man.
the windshield. Concussion, broken nose, my lip split open. You wouldn't have recognized me. And the first two people I see are my mom and my dad with tears rolling down their face
Oh man.
because they can't help their baby boy who doesn't think he's got a problem.
Right. Did they
And
know?
they knew, but a little blinded by the fact, how can he be this successful?
Yeah. I wondered about that.
You
Right.
know, if there's really a problem, you know.
Like,
And
no, he's got a car and a business and his friends, and he's
I bought
always.
my first condo at 21 years old. That's unheard of at that
Yeah,
age,
that's
you know,
crazy.
for $400,000. But, you know, I knew there was an issue. I knew something wasn't right. Um, but I wasn't ready to give it all up. I wanted to kind of adjust it. I knew that maybe the Xanax with the booze wasn't right, and I couldn't do coke, and there was the ecstasy, doing it 2, 3 days a week wasn't good for me, and I eventually wanted to find that balance of what worked, where I could still feel the way I wanted to feel, but not go overboard.
What's crazy to me is you're working with, at this point, athletes, and
Back then, I was doing the signings. Yeah,
you're doing the signings.
I wasn't in the agent game yet.
But even still, you're working with like these
Yeah,
world-class athletes and personalities.
yeah.
And I think was it Joe Frazier waking up at 3 a.m. doing 5-mile runs with ankle weights, or was it Muhammad Ali, or was it
It was
both of
Joe
them?
Frazier would tell me those stories.
I
Yeah.
mean, and you're working with them, and then you're thinking, cool, well, what did I do last night? I did a bunch of pills and then drank a bunch and then hit the gym and injected some steroids. And then, I
Yeah.
mean, how are you squaring their greatness with like your lifestyle at that
Well,
point?
you know, when I started working with the athletes and I had morality clauses in my agreement, that's when I got rid of the illegal drugs. And I really had sciatica. I mean, I had real hardcore sciatica, probably from the stresses and not knowing how to release them, and a lot of those underlying insecurities that were compressed that I didn't know how to deal with.
Sure.
And you know, when the craziness of the agency game would happen, I just knew to go right to the bottle. And you know, I was functioning for a while. Most of my guys will tell you that were around me. They didn't think there was a problem. They just thought Prince was having a good time. And, you know, I was up early. I'd made sure they made their flights. I made sure everybody got paid. The contracts were done right. I had a great team behind me. But eventually, like I said, you know, it's a certain point where it turned on me. I cannot tell you to this day when it turned on me, but it turned and it stopped
You
working.
can't really pinpoint the time.
No, there was a time maybe my early 30s where it just didn't have the effect that it once had. I remember walking into an event, believe it or not, at this hotel, the Mondrian we're at right now. I think it might have been maybe 2001. I was with Smokin' Joe, and it was the ESPY Awards after party. And I think Tom Brady just won his first Super Bowl. And I remember leaving the ESPY Awards and chopped up a couple Percocets and went in the bathroom to snort them. And we came in the limo over here to go to the after party, and I felt nothing. I felt nothing. Nothing. And now here I am walking in with the king of kings, and I felt like I lost my mojo. What I'm going to do is meet all these athletes. Samuel Jackson's going to see me, just hosted the awards. I'm not going to communicate. I'm not going to talk. I remember my hands started getting all sweaty. And that was probably the first time I walked into an event where I felt like I lost my superpowers. And ironically, I saw Kobe Bryant here that night too. I just worked with, and I just had him on.
Yeah.
And my boy said, you know, with him, I wrote about it in the book. He saw me go over to him, and he goes, "You had that little flash of greatness, like you were able to walk over. Hey, man, what's up?" But then the rest of the night, you weren't yourself.
Oh man. So that must have then spoke to your insecurity as not being worthy of being there in the first place,
Yep.
which is like really really scary to have that come crawling back after you've done all this to
After I
beat
felt
that
like I
down,
was up here,
to
and
mute that. You're like, how many drugs do I have to do to get rid of that? And here it is creeping back in.
yep,
It's like wherever you go, there you are, right?
exactly.
Oh man. And you're doing so well with your clients at this point, right?
Yep,
Because you're not just a businessman, you're a fan, and the clients can tell.
exactly.
And you land Ali, you got Magic Johnson,
Evel
uh,
Knievel,
yeah,
Hulk, yeah, Ric Flair, Roy Jones Jr., Rodman. There was so many. Chevy Chase, to this day, is a client. Yeah, and always making sure I got the job done.
for addicts, the night before looks different, but the morning after always looks the same. Barfing either on Skid Row or into a golden toilet in Trump Tower. It's like the great equalizer. That's from your book, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's like the great equalizer, but in a very, very unglamorous way.
Right.
How did you figure that out? How did that become something you felt viscerally and realized?
I would come whenever I would come to. I think I would look at my surroundings, and although if there was a certain woman there or a lady friend, and I just celebrated a certain success, I always knew no matter where the environment is, I always woke up to the same atmosphere. And it was always something with that energy related to whatever partying I was doing. Didn't matter if I was in a Holiday Inn or a Ritz Carlton. It was always that same hungover, even if it's an opiate over, as I like to call them, too many, nauseous, not feeling right. Always came down to that, no matter where I was geographically.
I can barely keep it together after 2 drinks. Like I wake up the next morning, I'm like, oh, I'm too old for this shit. Your liver must have been on seventh gear.
Yeah, my liver enzymes 11 and a half years later are still slightly elevated from all the opiates.
Like Billy Rubin count or something.
Yeah, there's a handful of ailments that I have. I lost my hearing completely
Oh,
at
that's from that.
25 years old. I firmly believe, as do some of the doctors, is from excessive opiate use. I think Rush Limbaugh has a hearing problem. There's a very well-known TV
Yeah.
announcer, and he was a opiate addict, and a lot of other issues that have.
I didn't know you could lose your hearing from it. That.
If you read up on opiates, one of the big side effects from long-term opiate abuse is hearing loss.
Huh. Yeah, I guess I never really thought about that. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
I guess it's lucky that's the only thing that you lost, right? Is it one
Yes.
hearing in one ear? Jeez.
Just the left ear.
Jeez. Well, there's lots of surreal moments that you had before that. A lot of you're like, I mean, the book reads like part music video and then part maybe like a Crystal Method music video. You know, it's like music. Oh, rap music video. Oh, EDM music video. You're in strip clubs with celebrities. You're on jets and things like that. But all of this contributes to your sense of not really belonging, right? Like the whole imposter syndrome. It makes it all worse, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it made it all worse. In that moment, I don't recognize it. I don't
Yeah.
realize it. I can't identify with it. But there was a certain point, like that next morning or whatever it might have been, where I couldn't get that feeling back, and I was struggling to find it, no matter how many pills I took or however I timed it to not take them on a full stomach and only snort half of them and let the rest go under my tongue and melt. It was absolute insanity. Whatever I had to do was a full-time job to make sure I got that fix that I needed.
Jeez, so you're managing your addiction is like this whole routine.
Yep.
It's like eat, sleep, manage. Well, not even in that order. Manage addiction, sleep, eat.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The addiction come
unbelievable.
first.
Doing business and at the level where you are and where you were even then, you had to have your reputation intact. You had to have your integrity intact. Didn't you ever think, holy shit, what if I get caught doing all these drugs?
No, because they were legal. They were prescribed by a doctor, as we talked about. Doctor wrote them.
Yeah.
I'm good.
So it's all good.
Yeah, there was no, back then, all you need to do is travel with Oxycontins or Percocets. I'm sure it's the same. Or Vicodin, just have a prescription bottle with your name on it. And that was it. I mean, like I said, I did cut out the illegal drugs. I knew there was no more, ecstasy,
Sure.
coke, all that other crap. I was done with that once I became an agent. So I just shifted into, opiates.
There was an I don't even know how to phrase this. There was a little scare with the integrity, though, with the FBI.
Yes.
Tell us how the FBI and you got involved with one another, because that was
So that's how I made
terrifying.
my transition into the agency game. I had Prince of Cards, which was my memorabilia company. We were at the height of the business. We were the king of autograph signings. I literally just left Muhammad Ali at the Essex House in New York City. This was in 1996 in the summer. We spent 2 days with him signing the photos of him lighting the Olympic torch, which he did 2 weeks prior. I got a voicemail from an FBI agent. I'm writing a column in Tough Stuff magazine called The Autograph Experience about all these icons that I'm around and what the experience was like. And I called the officer on a Sunday night. He said, we'd love to have you come to Chicago. There's a case we could use your expertise. We'll fly you in and we'll pay you. Of course, the ego, the big shot.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool.
That's a brilliant move on
Yeah.
their part, though.
Yeah.
Like, plays every
right.
card.
Of course they're calling me because I'm Darren Prince. I just left Muhammad Ali. And so the next morning, I got a call from another FBI agent telling me that we may need you to come with an attorney to look at some merchandise that we have. I was
Ooh.
like, this is really odd. So I call up my attorney. He goes, don't call them back. Let me call them. He's like, I think you should bring me. I'll charge you a couple grand for the day. Let's go in and out. And the night before I left, the provider of this merchandise that I bought a lot of it from, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of autographed memorabilia, told me that the FBI was trying to get him on tax evasion and not to give them any information on him. Developed a relationship with the guy. It's like, whatever, I'm bulletproof. I did nothing wrong.
Sure.
I go out there, and they sat with me for about 2 hours. They recorded everything. And the one question they asked that they kept pushing me on was, did you ever have any inquiries, Mr. Prince, for refunds from any of your customers? I go, no. I go, everybody loved the merchandise. This is authenticated by one of your own, an FBI forensic document expert. Okay, no problem. So we'll take a break. We come back after lunch. They said, we're going to ask you one more time, Mr. Prince. Are you sure and certain that nobody in your office ever had an issue with the refund? It's like, no, never. They had a tape recorder. It wasn't of our conversation. They were tapping my phone lines for 6 months. And it was one of my
Wow.
sales rep arguing with an attorney in Hawaii
Oh,
who was
man.
trying to return some merchandise, saying he got word that it was fake and it wasn't really signed by Michael Jordan. And so they investigated me for about another year and a half. I lost everything
Yeah.
financially. So I started sending out refund letters to keep my reputation intact, and it was devastating. Probably half the people took a refund, to be honest with you. So many of them loved the merchandise, and the autographs looked so legit. Some people didn't want to believe that it was fake. But I lost everything. I wound up about $1 million in debt.
Oh,
This was the
man.
first time in my life I had financial problems. My friends were, giving me $200-300 a week just to eat. My condo was almost in foreclosure, and my last 3 grand that I had from writing some of these articles in Tough Stuff magazine, I decided to take my dad to a fishing trip in Alaska, and that's kind of when everything changed. A week before we left, I got sentenced to 3 years probation. All these icons came through for me. Magic Johnson and Lon Rose and his agent at the time sent letters to the judge, Lonnie Ali, Muhammad Ali, Harlan Werner, Dwight Manley, and Dennis Rodman, Dennis's longtime player rep, about my credibility, that I made a mistake. So I took my dad away.
But what was your mistake? That's confusing,
I
right?
basically I lied to the FBI.
But did
I
you
got charged with making a false statement.
do that deliberately, or you weren't?
No, I
That's what it
truly
sounds like.
believed we didn't have any issues with refunds.
Yeah.
I never heard about it because when my rep was talking to the attorney in Hawaii, he didn't tell me that there was an issue. He's like, you bought these items from us 8 months ago. How do we know they're still ours? That was what he said to the guy.
Yeah.
So because they couldn't get me on mail fraud, because there was no proof that I did anything intentionally, they cut a deal with me and they charged me with making a false statement to the FBI.
Oh,
So I
that's
got
like
3 years probation.
Gotcha.
Still a felony. I'm a felon, so
You can't
I
vote.
can't do jury duty, thank God.
Ugh.
But I'm allowed to vote. I've been able to vote.
Oh, wait. So you could wait a minute. So
It's a pretty cool thing in a way.
so you just don't ever have to go to jury duty, but you can do anything. What?
When
You just
Jordan,
can't
when
carry
the
a
jury
gun?
duty cards come in, I get so excited to go online and fill it in because the minute I check that box, have I ever been charged with a felony? It X's me right out. Every couple of years it comes in and says, sorry, you're unable to qualify.
All I have to do is become a felon. Life hack. Not
Yeah.
recommended, y'all.
So, obviously it took me a while to come out of it, but I took my dad with my last 3 grand to Alaska, and he refused to. He didn't want to go with me because you can't be wasting this money. And I said, Dad, come on, we need it. Let's just go. And as I talk about in the book, we were fishing, and we talked about it earlier. That I said to him, I need to do something different. He goes, what's your next move? And I was like, Dad, I think I'd make a great agent. I think I'd be really good at it because I'm caring. I'm good with details. These guys trust me. These women that I represent, they all trust me. But I'm not an attorney. And at 25, I don't want to go to law school. He goes, why do you need to be an attorney? He goes, life is about who you know, not what you know. He goes, you have so many incredible relations to be able to go to Muhammad Ali's ranch in Michigan and to go to Magic Johnson's house. And you can call, Dennis Rodman on the cell phone right now, or Joe Frazier. These are relationships that any attorney would give their right arm for in the entertainment industry. And so what are you saying? What should I do? Because Magic stuck by you through all of this. He knows about making mistakes. They all do. I would talk to him next time you see him about being your first client. And I remember being in Michigan with him. We were in Detroit about 3 weeks later. And I remember being a little bit high because it was a really nervous situation for me to walk into his room. He came by himself on this one trip. And I got into his room. He sat me down. He's just the most special man in the world. He sat me down. Come on, boy, sit down. How did it all work out? You're okay. You got through it. He goes, how you doing financially? I'm like, it's rough. And I kind of started crying a little bit. And he goes, look, man, you're going to make lemonade out of lemons. I guarantee you're going to look back at this time in your life and you're going to say, if that never happened, these other doors wouldn't have opened, because God tests great men and women, and he's testing you right now,
Hmm.
just like he tested me. And I'm like literally sitting here like this, and I said,
Shaking.
well, Irvin, I call him by his real name. I said, Irvin, I got an idea. He goes, what is it? I said, a business idea. He goes, okay, let me hear it. What's your next move? And I said, I want to be an agent. He goes, well, man, you need some big clients to do that. He goes, you have any idea who you're looking to have as your first client? And I still get choked up telling the story, because you hear about these moments in life. I listen to guys like you and Lewis Howes and Jay Shetty and Gary Vee, and you have these moments in your life that if you don't go for it, you could regret it forever. And it came out, and I said, I would love to have you as my first client if that's possible. And because do you have a good entertainment lawyer? I said, no, I don't. He goes, well, you better find one and send a contract to the office next week. And he looks at me and goes, I'm going to give you 2 years to represent me. But if you don't use me and knock down every door to bring in all the biggest celebrities you can, I'm going to fire you, because it's not how successful I become, Darren. I'm going to be successful. It's how successful I make you and everybody else around me.
Wow.
Because life is about what you can do for other people. And I left the room like thinking, because in that business bank, did he just tell me that I should be exploiting him to build
Yeah, that's
my
what. Yeah,
company, my agency?
yeah.
And it's exactly what he did. I mean, within 6 months, I had Chevy Chase, Pamela Anderson, Dennis Rodman. I met a year later. Smoking Joe Frazier was actually the second, right after Magic. A couple years after that, Magic was in Hawaii with Dave Winfield. I got a lead for a slot machine licensing deal for Evel Knievel. I found out on the
You're
call
the
that
one that makes all the weird
exactly.
Ellen slot machine, all
Yeah.
those
Yep.
weird branded
Yep.
things.
So I get Evel on the phone with Magic, and Magic tells him all these great things about me, and Evel Knievel's now a client. And I didn't understand that back then, but now I do, because when I look at all these outlets that we have now, we're so dialed in at such a high level to the ad agencies and the corporations. It all helps everybody. It's all one big family. So I now look at what Magic said and meant, and it was true. It was spot on.
What did you learn from having to call all your celebrity friends and the other card dealer or memorabilia dealers and have to just come clean about this whole FBI thing? Because that could have destroyed you, but it didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it killed me, but it was also, in a way, I'll tell you, when I was so broke, I remember telling myself that I'm never going to forget this feeling, because thank God I had the perspective enough to look at it differently and say, I don't have kids right now. I'm a single guy, and I do think I can rebuild. I do believe I'm going to turn this around. And I was on Dave Meltzer's podcast about this conversation, because he was made and lost it. And I said, Dave, I just knew. I had this feeling inside of me that my time is going to come again. And it was a wake-up call to watch my spending, be more careful about just throwing money out there the way that I was throwing it. And yeah, little by little, within a couple of years, it started to happen.
Yeah, it just seems like it would be. I mean, you really could have turned the corner in a bad way and been like, reputation shot. You're still using at this point.
Of course.
So that could have just been.
Yep.
That could have been you flushing it down the toilet
That's
at that
it.
point.
Yep.
Jeez, man. 'Cause even later on, I mean, this imposter syndrome. Do you think you're over it now, or do you just manage it differently?
No, I think I'm over it now.
Really?
I truly do.
Yeah.
I truly do. I don't know if I could have told you that 4 or 5 years into my sobriety. But man, you put me in front of a football field with 100,000 people at Wembley right now, I'll speak to them like I'm speaking to you, and love every minute of it, and be so comfortable talking about the uncomfortable, knowing that not as much that I needed God, but God needed Darren Prince at a certain point. That my journey was all about being a recovery advocate, getting this message out there. I don't care what end of the world you're from, that you can turn your darkest days into the brightest of lights, because I'm living proof.
I think it is a good point. I think it is great that you, of course, eventually made it to sober, because there's an anecdote in the book where Dennis Rodman and you are partying like for a long, long, long time. I mean, months and months or years and years, whatever it is. And then one day he wakes you up and says, "Hey, man, you're going to miss your flight."
Yeah.
When Dennis Rodman wakes you up because you're going to miss your flight, did you kind of get on that plane and go, hang on a second, if Dennis Rodman is the responsible adult in our relationship, what's happening?
I was still, we did an interview with Fox last week for his ESPN 30, and I told that story. I was still a little bit like buzzed when he woke me up, but the amazing thing was after Celebrity Big Brother in England, so he got evicted from the house, and we hit a strip club that night. We went to a bar called Pangea. He woke me up. We barely made it on the flight. We're on the plane and we're on the right side in business class. And he looks over. I was like, bro, is that Muhammad? I'm like, what's he talking about? I looked to my left. Muhammad, Alani, Ali are 2 rows to the left of us on the same flight. So we got up and said hello to him, gave him a big hug. And I was like, go figure. But no, I don't really think it meant that much. And I think we were laughing about it because I was still at that point where it was somewhat working.
Mm-hmm.
I realized it obviously a few years later that
Yeah.
there's something really wrong with Dennis Rodman waking up his agent so they don't make the flight.
So
So they
that
make
you
the
don't miss
flight.
the flight.
Yes,
Yeah,
they make the flight, yeah.
because it just doesn't. I mean, looking back then, were you looking at him and going, "Wow, he's out of control," but I'm fine?
That's exactly what it was. And I'd be on the plane like swallowing pills and having a Bloody Mary or so, and he'd be drinking. I'm like, dude, you got to slow down with the freaking drinking, man. You're out of freaking control. Like we'd yell, we'd fight with each other, and don't tell me you and your freaking pills, Darren. It was like 2 brothers.
They're from a doctor.
Yeah, exactly, dude. I would hold the bottle. Dr. So-and-so gave them to me. Don't start with me. I got sciatica.
Yeah. Like, how's your sciatica?
Yeah.
You've had 17 Vicodin and it's 9 a.m. Jeez. How did you end up sending Dennis, and you, by the way, going with him to North Korea? Like, what happens when you get that request and you're like, this seems like a good idea? Take me through this thought process here.
So I got a call from Shane Smith and somebody from his office.
I
forgot the guy's name, from Vice Media. And they tell us about this idea to bring Dennis with the Harlem Globetrotters to be a producer on the special and on-air talent. Not a lot of money, but something historic for him to be a part of. And I was like, all right, I'll bring it to him. It sounded unique. And the trip got canceled 3 different times, Jordan. Like, we had contracts, signed dates. They started working on flights. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why that kept happening. But this is crazy. They gave us a deposit.
Yeah.
They booked the flights, and they're changing it again.
Like, get your shit together.
We keep putting it on Dennis's schedule. Like, guys, we're missing opportunities. Enough is enough. And finally, it gets done, and they call me and tell me that they got the clearance that they needed. It's like, all right, I just figured they needed clearance to film. I didn't know there was other clearance involved. At the time, Psy was the biggest thing in the world to rap.
Gangnam Style, right?
So I go downstairs to Steve Simon, who's the VP of my agency, who did the baseball card show with me. Steve is the book smart guy. And I go downstairs with the contract, so excited. I go, bro, finally, I got the deal done with Dennis to go to Korea. We got to figure out who Psy's manager is so he can see Psy. And he goes, cool, dude. When's he leaving? Let me see the contract. And I go, he's going to North Korea on, he goes, you mean south? I go, no, north. He's like, bro, are you an idiot? He goes, you can't send him to North Korea. And I said, what are you talking about? This is going to be historic. He looks at it, starts pulling everything up on North Korea on the internet. He goes, come here, you moron. Look at this. They start showing me all these stories.
Yeah,
and
the most
I go, oh my God, it's
world.
crazy. I'm like, let me call Dennis. And I called him up. And to his credit, man, if he was sitting right here, he's like, dude, I don't give a damn. Just make sure I'm safe. Because if nobody's met this leader, this ruler, I guarantee I'm going to meet this motherfucker. And I might be able to open up some doors with him and President Obama and create some seriously historical shit.
And
It's
he
exactly
literally
what Dennis
said that on the phone.
Exactly what Dennis said to me. And I go, man, that's pretty cool. And, we sent them, and they called me at like 11 o'clock that night when he was already in Beijing, as you have to take that Beijing flight into the airport in Pyongyang. And they said, get ready for your client's biggest press hit of his life. And I go, well, guys, it's not going to be bigger than the wedding dress. I mean, please. They're like, this is going to dwarf the wedding dress.
This
You got to
is
keep
international
in mind.
news.
Yeah, it's international. There's social media now. There wasn't social media back then. When I woke up at 5 in the morning to go, go to the bathroom, I've never seen more text messages, more emails, more media outlets around the world. It was like nothing I've ever seen, because at that point he already went to the game. And he was already had that iconic moment where he's sitting next to Kim Jong-un like this.
Right.
And it was everywhere. Breaking news. And I couldn't believe it.
I think Vice's value tripled after that week, at least.
Oh, you've got a wonderful pistachio commercial. Oprah did a interview with him. He was the first basketball player ever over 50 years old, or I think athlete in general, to open Saturday Night Live with Live from New York Saturday Night. He got a Foot Locker commercial. And we didn't do it for that. We didn't expect any of this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you think at any point, okay, from all I read on Wikipedia, thanks to my buddy, he might never come back from North Korea?
I did for a minute, but when he made it back that first trip, then I kind of felt a lot more comfortable. I figured, this is pretty cool. Dennis said they want him to come back in a few more months.
If he wanted to keep him, he would have kept him.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Yeah.
Oh man, you've lived a hell of a life so far. So what's next for you?
What's next for me, man? I mean, I'm just happy, like we talk about today, but I find my real self, man, and be out there. The business is going to take care of itself. I'm always going to, you know, be a hustler. My clients know that about me, but it's about the recovery. It's about, just getting my message out there around America, around the world to show kids, adults, whoever it might be, that hope and recovery exist. And no matter what you're going through, there's nothing that makes me happier than getting in front of a live audience and knowing that the lights come on in somebody's eyes and I find one person in that crowd whose life gets changed. Because I've been given a gift. Sobriety and recovery is a gift. And I got to work hard at it every single day, going to my meetings and giving back. I had a random message on Instagram this morning, 7 o'clock this morning, a guy in New York. Hey, man, can you call me? I'm struggling. I'm very inspired by your post. Drop everything. I put up conference calls. That's how I build self-esteem, by doing esteemable acts. That's how I could tell you that, what's the word you used before? That there is no more imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
Because I know the real Darren Prince. I finally arrived to a spot where most people never get to in their lifetime. And what a feeling that is at 49 years old when I look how I was at 29 years old and 19 years old. And, you're never too old to make that change. And it's like I said, this is the greatest thing I've done for myself for the longest amount of time. And, the agent life, that's good and great, man. That's bullshit. That's not why I was put on this earth. This right here, and like I said, everything I do with getting this message out there, this is my calling. I found myself.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much, man.
Thanks for
Been
having
great.
me.